Welcome back, everybody, once again to the Hearthstone Grandmasters Europe, and you are watching there Muzzy and Eddie talking about the Americas region. That's going to be the match of the day in 2 or 3 hours' time over in the Americas region. But we're now going to concentrate on Division B in Europe, and we have got Seiko and RDU, and Seiko the runaway leader in that division. RDU is in that cluster of people who started the day 4-4, so absolutely massive for him to try and get out of that mess.
I mean, Seiko is 7-1, obviously a dominant player, and we actually saw Fino lose a game very recently.
Lose a match?
Lose a match. I apologize for that. Hopefully Seiko can match that record.
That'd be interesting, actually. Yeah, keep Fino
a little
quiet
bit,
to
yes,
be nice, wouldn't it?
Maybe Seiko eventually passes him.
Let's have a look what Seiko's bringing to the table for this one. Have a look. He is bringing what looks very much like a mage deck to me.
Yes, but I want to point out something very huge. Seiko has a Doomsayer. That is not something that we often see in the mage builds. I think it's an anti-mage tech, where you go Frost Nova Doomsayer. They often can't answer it, and if they do, they would have to use something like Conjurer's Calling on your Doomsayer.
Yeah, because you've been talking about the number of times you have to Conjurer's Calling an opposing 2-mana minion just to try and get a Doomsayer. Well,
he just put that in
play
his deck.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
And Vex Crow is interesting to me. I played Vex Crow a little bit in this deck, and I didn't enjoy it much. I felt like the payoff wasn't very good compared to Mount Seller, where the payoff's actually huge.
Well, Mount Seller is also a card that I would say is not so great. Vex Crow is one that you want in the anti-aggro deck. If you can go Vex Crow with like a Sorcerer's Apprentice down and just go Ray of Frost, suddenly you have actual tempo against an aggressive lineup. RDU is bringing just Burgle Rogue, no Sharks. I'm sorry, not Sharks, no Sea Giants.
I was going to say no Sharks. I'm looking at Novice Engineers. You say no Sharks. I'm thinking,
yeah,
what?
He has 2 Sharks, yes.
But yeah, he does have the 2 Sharks. Of course you do. I think people have pretty much settled down now a little bit on that subject. And I realize that Sharks are good Hearthstone card.
I want to point out that he also has a secondary deck for a mage. He has Betrayal, 2 Fairy Dragons, 2 Walk the Planks. We've been talking about this a little bit this weekend, where Fairy Dragon is just a good card versus mage because it can't really be answered by the tools mage has. Ray of Frost doesn't work, Ping doesn't work. You really need to use their minions to contest it.
Or Frost Nova Doomsayer if you happen to put a Doomsayer in your main deck.
Yes. Doomsayer itself actually answers it pretty nicely.
Yeah.
They go Fairy Dragon, you go Doomsayer.
If you're a rogue, you can find a way of doing 4 damage to something.
Blink Fox, Vendetta, Backstab, SI7, but outside of that, not too much answers it. Backstab Dagger alone doesn't kill it. You are 1 damage off, so you'll need something besides that.
I think the format specialist suits both of these players. Seiko always, for a man who got like 150 or 160 or even more HCT points last year, sort of complained a little bit about how he found tournaments very different, you know, relative to how good he is.
Sure.
You know, I wouldn't do better than him in a tournament, but he did well in a lot of tournaments. And Radu has made it very clear that he's much more comfortable playing this format than playing week-to-week tournaments. So interesting to see how these two go over the next couple of seasons, not just today.
I mean, I think that just harkens back to how these players approach Hearthstone. You know, RDU is more of a streamer than a competitor. Seiko was someone that kind of made his name for himself playing tournament after tournament last year.
Right.
So obviously they'll have different opinions on the format. But let's talk about this match.
Yeah, let's talk about this Mana Cyclone.
Observe and reflect.
Do you want to play it?
I want to play it next turn alongside my Apprentice.
Well, we could go Apprentice, Ray of Frost, Elemental Invocation, Mana Cyclone this turn. You put stuff in play. Your opponent has to answer it, and they use coins, so something like SI7 alone wouldn't really kill it. Seiko agrees with you, though. Says that next turn makes a lot of sense. Also, there's a lot of spells that you can get off the top of your deck that make it better.
I always want to play the Cyclone when I play the Apprentice, because there's so many 1-mana spells you can pick up that you can actually get extra spelling on the turn.
Second Ray of Frost, for example, or Magic Trick. Both are excellent pickups.
So I like to play them on the same turn to get the freebie.
Yep. Even Arcane Intellect there is really huge as well.
But the other side of that is this happens to you while you're waiting.
Sure.
You know, RDU is going to load up his board very heavily and have good plays for next turn as well. So it is a double-edged sword waiting, but he's happy waiting. So I'm going to say that's good. So much value. Interestingly, choosing not to throw it back down. Now, normally that wouldn't be interesting, but looking at the rest of his curve for the next couple of turns, obviously he has got Shark, but also he had the opportunity to just play it back down and just start wedging 4 drops and 5 drops onto the board and just forget about the shark plan completely, or for the time
Yeah,
being.
you're saying that he's forgoing a little bit of tempo to just get that extra value from the shark.
Yeah.
I kind of like what RDU did here. I think that the extra battle cries on lackeys are especially good. It's kind of the reason that you play Spirit of the Shark is because how good lackeys are when their battle cries are doubled.
I was just thinking next turn if you play a hench clan, you're in such a great spot.
Sure.
Like normally, I 100% understand why you would do it, but I wasn't certain it fit the curve, and RD made the decision quite quickly.
Yep. Now it's kind of where the game plan deviates for RDU. Does he go Hench Clan Burglar, Vendetta, or does he go Spirit of the Shark, set up for an Evil Miscreant next turn? We saw Kalento in the last game have this kind of situation happen again, but it was a very different matchup. He elected to go with Hench Clan Burglar Vendetta instead of Spirit of the Shark.
And what caught my eye here, even though RDU is playing the more straightforward version that he set up last turn, is I want to be playing, in some situations, a shark on 7 here and just go for the Life Drinker kill, try and get 24 damage in before then, or and just go for the massive blowout Life Drinker on turn 8. But obviously then you're losing so much value. If things go wrong in the meantime, you're just going to lose. So RDU making sure that he gets it over with quickly.
I mean, I think that the Evil Miscreant is just so powerful at 1 mana.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, but specifically with the Shark and how RDU's hand is panning out, you know, he can go backstab and then play 4 lackeys alongside the Evil Miscreant. And their battle cries are all doubled.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense how much value he's going to get. The punish could be if your opponent in the meantime sets up 2 7/8 taunts, you're going to need a lot more value to get the game done.
Yeah, that was not going to happen for quite a while.
Sure. And actually, as it turns out, Seiko is in Wisp mode. He's got a lot of stuff here, though. Wow. Shooting Star ×2, is that?
Yes. Icicle just to draw another card here seems great. Shooting Starring your own Wisp doesn't sound that great, so maybe we don't do that.
Khadgar Conjurer's Calling on anything is always handy. Especially against Rogue, who don't have those big blow out your 3/4s and 2/3
Sure, yeah,
turn.
yes. You're saying that even when the minions are small, they're still quite
They're
powerful.
fine against Rogue.
Yeah.
It's different against Warrior, that's no value to you, because they just warpath it all. But
Absolutely agree. These are actually pretty interesting lackeys to play. As RD, you kind of have to be worried about Seiko having a Mountain Giant. He has 2 in his deck list. So if you do go wide, you also need to make sure that you clear enough stuff that you don't give Seiko something like Mountain Giant Conjurer's Calling. Now on the flip side, if he goes Sea Giant Conjurer's Calling, that means that your Shark is probably going to stay alive. And then the game plan diverges even more, because now you have a Hench Clan Burglar that you can play for 2 cards, but...
the other thing with going wide-ish like Seiko did last turn is it plays around these lackeys quite well. They tend to do a lot of damage to 1 minion very well, but as you can't retarget them, you end up wasting damage and overkilling things.
Are you just being very patient with his resources?
RDU being patient about anything.
I don't know RDU well enough to determine what his playstyle is.
His playstyle is... I haven't seen enough of him because he took last year, by his standards, I don't want to undersell him here because he still worked very hard, but he spent a lot more time on his stream and generally just slowly recovering from not quite making it to Worlds 2 years running.
Yeah.
And I think that took a little bit of a toll on him and he needed a year to just gather his thoughts a bit. So his style will have changed from our last time. He likes, in general, mid-range and aggro stuff, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of fits into what Rogue is. But I don't really think Rogue is necessarily like a very fast deck.
I mean, I think he's a good player. He can play anything, obviously.
Yeah.
As all the Grandmasters are. That's why they're here.
It is interesting. It is interesting though, because we have seen people have pet decks, where some they feel very comfortable on, some that they don't. I mean, for Seiko, I think that Cyclone Mage is kind of his pet deck at the moment. I wouldn't say that he's,
more.
I would not say that he's uncomfortable on other stuff, but just specifically,
It's the ongoing thing with Hearthstone, especially when you're playing weekly, so you only have 2 or 3 days to prepare each week. You're always going to have a deck you're better at than other decks.
Sure.
It's just a case of what the difference is and how much you feel you'll get punished for bringing the same thing. I mean, ideally, you'll play the deck you're best at something like, I don't know, 2/3 of the time, to guess, and then catch people by surprise 1/3 of the time so they can't just hard target you.
That sounds about right.
And then there's meta considerations which lower it even more, as we're looking at. Seiko still on 26, but that Avenging Wrath pickup from RDU really... Well, is it that good? Because if he gets to the point where he can Avenging Wrath for lethal and needs to, Seiko might have 7 minions on board.
It just depends on how the situation pans out, right?
So what I'm thinking is you're not playing that Avenging Wrath for some time.
Yes, you're not playing it for a while, and you're saying that...
If the game is still going, you haven't got the board.
Especially with Vexcro that we just saw picked up from Seiko. I imagine he's looking at something like fireballing a 4/3 here.
The more I look at RDU's hand, the more I really like it, but...
Seiko's hand is also quite good here.
Yeah.
I think the question is, can we set up a lethal somehow with something like Spirit of the Shark, Kobold Lackey, Goblin Lackey, and then next turn we have double Life Drinker, for example. Maybe we fit in a Waggle Pick instead somewhere? Or maybe Artie fits in a Waggle Pick somewhere?
And from where he's sat, he is really on the clock. A Mountain Giant into Conjurer's Calling is such a nightmare for him.
I actually disagree with that.
Okay.
I think that he has enough tools to deal with the Mountain Giant Conjurer's Calling.
But, I mean, he can deal with it, but will he have anything left afterwards?
Yes.
And this...
A lot of minions in play.
Sure. Taking the direct damage.
What I will say is, something that I don't think he can deal with is actually his Vexcro right now. So it's kind of funny how that works out.
Yeah.
Vexcro actually represents a bigger threat than another small thing that I want to point out, but is slightly relevant. His positioning for Shooting Star was terrible.
Yeah, and it's not just that there's Cone of Cold. It's not like it's one card and he's forgotten it exists. It's probably 3 or 4 cards. Or is it? It's at least
Shooting
2.
Star, Cone of Cold, I believe.
Is it the only 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the others are on target.
Technically Meteor, but that doesn't really apply when there's only... With the stat line distribution that it is right now, that doesn't apply. So...
There must be a way.
But yeah, he's getting very slightly punished here for that. Will it matter? That's probably not. But it could.
That's more than slightly punished. That's a medium-y punish, I'd say.
You give up a 1/1.
Yeah, we talked earlier about how important it is to not lose 1 damage. Seiko's found a way to get a really irritating board. So, last Shark available here, and then RDU's on his own with whatever he's got left, which is quite a lot by the look of things.
That's about as good as a Vendetta ever gets.
Strangely enough. When he does exact the amount of damage that the minion has health,
It's really good.
you've maximized the damage.
Well, sometimes you could kill, what's the 7/4 pirate?
Yeah, that guy.
This guy's toast.
It's better there.
Yeah.
He could have buffed his Shark and just gone face with it, put Seiko to 8. Maybe that reaches a break point.
So next turn, Seiko is dead in a lot of situations.
But not all of them.
He has to find the situations where he's not dead and make those work for him.
So what you're saying is he has to stay alive.
So he has
and
to kill the
his
shark and then kill his opponent in 2 turns.
All right.
And reflect.
He'll know there's 2 lackeys left. He may just take the risk that they're no good and start freezing sharks. Pinging 5/1s. Freezing sharks, freezing 5/1s instead of using the mana to kill sharks, is what I'm saying.
It's really difficult because you're kind of relying on your Vexcro at this point to pull taunts. But the taunts you get at 2 mana just aren't that great.
Yeah, Rogue is really good at dealing with little things.
Yeah.
Unless there's a lot of them, and there's not going to be a lot of them. Yeah, so here's the...
Well, it's not even about that. It's more that Marty wants to go face, so Seiko needs to get a lot of taunts. Or one taunt with a lot of health. And there's really nothing like that at 2 mana. You know, you're looking at Frostwolf front.
One.
I'm counting 1 off lethal here.
That's my first check as well.
Goblin, Lackey, Wagglepick, Life Drinker is
Yeah, that's
1
where
off.
I'm at. Can't see anything better, so... Should be alright anyway, though. But with that in mind, yeah, you might as well get some board and keep... Because the Life Drinker can be played at any point.
Yep. Well, here's the thing, is that if Seiko full clears RDU's board, which is what he's likely to do, we have Life Drinker, or RDU has Life Drinker, Wagglepick, Life Drinker for exact lethal.
Picks up Ziliax. Can he make that into more than 3 health, though?
Yes, that is very, very, very good. Khadgar, Ziliax, Conjurer's Calling.
And get another Ziliax.
Yes. So you do it first.
Here it comes. Making space.
You should start... No, because you get 4. So starting with it is better. Like, let's say you get 2 Ziliaxes, which is, if you get a Ziliax, you're going to get 2 of them.
Yep.
You get more life that way.
That's not a Ziliax. That's not a Ziliax.
Is that just lethal? That is just lethal, right? Because we can Life Drinker go face. RDU, up 1-0 in this game.
Do you want to say, I was right about the Avenging Wrath. Exactly the situation if he had survived. Avenging Wrath was never played.
Oh, Avenging Wrath was lethal there too.
Not in RDU's hands. You've seen RDU's, haven't you, over the years, right? But yeah, you see what I mean by that.
The odds of that are pretty unlikely.
So, RDU taking that 1-0 lead, very important for him to try and get to that 5-4 record. But still, getting through Seiko twice in a row is still not that easy.
So we saw a game where it just panned out very differently compared to the Colento game. RDU, instead of deciding to go for Henchland Burglar Vendetta, goes with Spirit of the Shark, and I think it actually paid off really well in that game.
We're here, they're both going to switch their secondary decks. As I just blank you out there, let's have a look.
That makes a lot of sense.
Like.
Looking at Seiko's list, he has a Halftime Scavenger and Rabble Bouncer added over Mountain Giant and Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Just let's get things in the way. Let's not try and dig for taunts. Let's just put them in the deck.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Rabble Bouncer is a card that's really good versus a bunch of lackeys. You can play Rabble Bouncer, Conjurer's Calling it. It's going to be hard for the Rogue to deal with that. It's also going to be hard for the Rogue to deal with Halftime Scavenger specifically, because you can just play it. Nothing that Rogue plays really doesn't get contested by a 3-5. So you can hit your 3-5 in and then Conjurer's Calling it. Suddenly you're actually far ahead on the board.
It's such a weird tech card, but it works just so cleanly. Some cards only have these very, very tiny, narrow uses, and this is kind of one of them for me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about Specialists is you see a bunch of these cards that, you know, would never see play in other tournament formats. And if you look at RDU, he's switching to his secondary as well. He's got Betrayal, Fairy Dragon, Walk the Plank. We were talking about that earlier. Those
And
are just...
You get the impression from what he's taking out that he doesn't really have a plan. He's taking out Cable Rat, Eviscerate, Life Drinker, Wagglepick, Ziliax, like one of each. It's like, I know I want these 5 cards in my deck.
But you just don't know which ones you don't.
I don't know what to do about taking cards out. I suspect that could be, in some way or form, that could be optimized a bit better than it is.
Maybe it's also a mind game for Seiko, where he takes out all these cards but still has 1 copy of them, so Seiko stops playing around it. I'm just not really sure if, like, not playing around a card really matters when it's Evil Cable Rat.
It's interesting that you take out a Cable Rat but leaving a Novice Engineer, for instance.
I think that Novice Engineer overall is actually a slightly better card in the matchup. I think it's just slightly better overall in general.
Yeah, I guess it also depends if you're putting these cards in just against Mage, or if you maybe do it against Warrior as well, then you want the card from the Novice.
Evil Cable Rat is far and away worse than Evil Miscreant, I would say.
Yes.
You're really only putting in the deck to activate Togwaggle and Shark.
Doomsayer. Done.
This is actually, this could be a 4 key from Seiko. Maybe he tosses away Stargazer Luna, but I think Doomsayer, Cyclone, and Arcane Intellect are all really powerful cards.
I think because Arcane Intellect's a keep, you can keep the Luna. Because you're going to have good cards on the...
You have something like
right-hand
Doomsayer
side
into
of your hand.
Stargazer Luna, but then the problem with it is Hench Clan Vendetta, something like that. So he decides to keep it. Those are all just powerful cards. They work really well with each other.
And Radu's got the clunky hand. The hand that Rogue doesn't enjoy until it changes.
The hand without coin.
Hand without coin, but also it's the double Hench Clan pick hand, which you don't really have anything to do. And the SI7 without an activator hand. It's fine. They're good value cards. But you'd rather be doing other things. Like
I think Hench Clan Burglar is fine in the matchup.
2 of them or just 1 in your opener? 2 seems
I mean,
a lot slower than 1.
the 1 on 4 is totally fine.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely.
Especially when you're on the play. When you're on the coin, it gets a lot different because in Evil Miscreant it suddenly becomes like the nuts, and Edwin Van Cleave also becomes the nuts.
But you don't want to have to play another one on 5. You'd rather be doing some combo-related stuff on 5.
Sure, but on the play, Hench Clan Burglar is pretty much your best cards at the top end. I mean, especially with how Psycho's hands panned out, RDU's hand actually lines up kind of nicely versus what he's doing.
Psycho not messing around with his Doomsayer, just going to get the first chance to put something on board. We talked earlier about how actually Doomsayer is quite easy to kill for Rogue with the combo effects, so you don't get many chances to play it, unless you've got a freeze effect, of course. Which is the other consideration, just save it forever and then a freeze effect. But choosing to get it over with now, get his Luna down and begin the process of getting a massive board. Backstab SI is the obvious solution, but it to some extent throws RDU off curve.
This guy's
Could also be going Waggle Pick here instead, but he just wants to put stuff in play. Makes sense to me.
So Sandbinder, he wanted to play this before his Arcane Intellect.
Remember that Psycho removed a Mountain Giant from his deck, so this is only a 50-50 here. He has 1 Mana Cyclone, 1 Giant. It's not a 66%er. Just another thing to consider in your calculations.
Gets it.
Gets the Giant.
And now he has such a lovely hand. RDU's hand still not developed how he would like, but it's not awful or anything. And RDU go for that Hunter's Mark.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, Hunter's Mark Backstab sounds like a good combo.
Hunter's Mark Dagger also sounds great.
You can't use Dagger, you have Waggle Pick. But yeah, you're right.
What is
You're very right.
What is interesting to me is not using the Goblin Lackey here.
Okay.
You could push 3.
So he's saving that for the Shark and some value.
Probably Toggle Waggle, I would say.
Meanwhile, at the top of the screen, it's go time with Seiko.
Unexpected results.
Sounds like a watch advert.
What are the best ones? Millhouse Mana Storm. Worst ones are Lore Rocket Show Doomsayer.
So you asked me a question, then answered it.
Well, I want you to come up with the other ones.
Well, you've
Good 2-drops.
good 2-drops. Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Ah, another one.
Anything that's already in your
Khadgar.
deck. Yeah, anything that's already in your deck.
Well, Doomsayer's already in your deck, but you don't want that.
No, I guess you don't. Thanos is probably fine.
Loot Hoarder is also probably okay.
Yeah. Gets
Although they
Thanos.
kind of don't work as well with Mana Cyclone.
Is there anything that charges on 2? I usually have a sheet in front of me that tells me these things, and I don't.
Those are both.
Oh, yeah, Mana Addict, yes, please. Oh, and Mana Worm's actually good if you get it first.
Yeah, Mana Worm is probably a little bit better.
I ran Mana Worm when I was trying to make this deck. Everyone's tried to make this deck into something else and failed.
Yeah.
And I actually tried running Mana Worm for a while in a, obviously a more aggro version. And you know what? It's still not a bad Hearthstone card. It's just not quite good enough anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's just too fair now, I would say.
But it's one of those cards that if you forget it exists, someone's going to come to a tournament and beat you with it one day in the future. Got to keep remembering it's there. So RDU needs to generate either some tempo or some value, as that's how Hearthstone works. But this is where the clunky hand still hasn't really unclunked as the game's gone on.
I think that the most obvious thing right now is backstabbing the 3-2. but then the hand kind of deviates from there. You know, you could waggle pick the 1/3. I think that you have to kill the Mana Addict as well, just based on how
you're playing
scary
against
that is.
somebody who's got a lot of cheap spells in their deck.
And possibly in their hand. We just saw Seiko get, what, 5 spells off of this?
And they're going to be using them to kill. They've got good targets for any spells they might have, so they're going to want to use them. So they're going to get a natural change. And this is forced RDU again. I don't think he wants to play this, but he wants to play the Shark and just chill for a turn. That's what you want to do in this position.
Yep.
But you can't, because Seiko's finding ways to generate pressure.
What's the name of the 2/4? Depleted...
You asking me card names again? Have you met me, Galen?
I believe it's Depleted X.
Depleted X.
Well, not X, but...
Thank you.
Unpowered... I wasn't even close. Unpowered Mauler.
So if you said unpowered, I'd have said Mauler. If you got your half right, I'd have been
okay, I apologize. Very sorry about that.
But yeah, that last turn from RDU, and that has come to some extent from the double Hench Clan in the opener.
Seiko could be looking at just playing another Mana Cyclone this turn with something like Cinderstorm. He wants to be able to play Giant Conjurer's Calling next turn. If he doesn't do anything now, he can do that. If he plays Mana Cyclone right now, he can do that. If he goes Cinderstorm Mana Cyclone, he can also do that. So I'm thinking Cinderstorm Cyclone.
Cinderstorm seems decent. Oh, Mirror's pretty good.
Mirror Entity also
got
makes
nothing
sense.
on the board.
Sure, sure. I guess the problem with it is you know your opponent has a Lackey, but they probably aren't starting with a Lackey.
Yeah, do you mind if they start with a Lackey? You get a bad Mirror, but then they start their turn with a Lackey.
You kind of do. A lot of the Lackeys you're fine starting with, right? Kobold. I mean, obviously, since it's the Rush Lackey, it's going to pay off really well here.
He probably has a good idea which Lackey it is from how the game's gone as well.
That's true as well. I would argue that giving Seiko Spear to the Shark isn't that relevant anymore.
That's actually fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take a quick look at Seiko's deck list. It seems like it's Banana Buffoon.
He didn't put a Twilight Drake in there, right?
Yeah, I believe it's only Banana Buffoon, but let me double check. From the remaining cards, it seems like the only card that will matter with this is Banana Buffoon. So that's actually maybe better than giving him a 1/1.
I think you're right. And he's finally managed to... This is what RDU's been playing for all game, is to get in this situation where the Shark functions with the Fox and the Burglar, but he's lost the board in doing so. He's going to have to be in a much better spot than this if he's going to win this one, I think. Yeah, this is just where it all starts to go wrong.
Seiko has some excellent positioning around this Kona Cold. It's worth pointing out.
He's also still on 28. This is the point where the Rogue starts wanting to go over the top to finish off the last 10 points of damage.
I find it very cool that, like, even in these very complicated spots, Seiko still finds a way to avoid the worst outcomes.
Sure.
You know,
any you have in mind there that could have gone wrong?
If you put the Giant on the left, suddenly the 2/2 gets frozen as well. You miss 2 damage.
Yeah, all that stuff sounds... It's not easy, but it's easy enough to understand. But then when you're doing it with every single part of every single turn...
It gets so difficult.
And it's good that you're here to highlight sort of the constant minor decisions that are making a difference. Because we only notice them when it actually costs a game, usually. Because they're concentrating on other stuff.
That's true.
But all the time, people like Seiko, you're wondering, well, why does he get so lucky? He goes 7-1. Well, he gets lucky because he doesn't get in a position where he can get unlucky.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that if we take preparation, we have a really interesting clear on this, on the 7-8 and the 8-8. We could go Goblin Lackey, RO2, Hunter's Mark the 7-8. We trade into the 7-8. We punch the 8-8 with our weapon, pick back up the Goblin Lackey, then Hench Clan Burglar, then play the Goblin Lackey on the Hench Clan Burglar, kill the 8-8. Very complicated turn.
Yeah, and Radu seems to not be sure what to do.
I believe we had enough mana to do all of that.
I think you're right, and I think that what he has done went wrong somewhere. This doesn't...
Well, did you see how I had to say 8 things?
Sure.
Say the clear?
Yeah, sure. But he doesn't have to say them. He just has to do...
And also, if you do it this way, you avoid getting the extra card off of the Hench Clan Burglar. And you also take 8 because you have to hit into the 7-8. Or the 8-8, I apologize.
Serve and reflect.
I don't really fault Artie for not seeing that. It might not
I
even
don't
be
fault
right.
you for not seeing your play, even if it did work out, because there's a lot going on. But there's some turns, you look at the resources somebody has at the start of the turn, you look at the resources they have at the end of the turn, and you look at the board and you think, that doesn't line up with what we just saw. It doesn't necessarily mean he's made a massive mistake, but I don't feel that turn made any progress at all.
I mean, I think that he was still in a very bad spot, even if he did manage to clear both the Giant and the Grave Horror.
For instance, my instinct is he shouldn't have a Hunter's Mark in his hand right now.
Yes.
One way or another.
Yes.
Whatever the play, somewhere in your panicky instincts because the rope's burning, which is fair enough, everyone does that. That Hunter's Mark should have been played on a big minion, and that minion should be dead.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm not expecting him to find the absolute perfect play that you were possibly coming out with.
All right, so we can Blink Fox into Conjurer's Calling. Conjurer's Calling a 2/2, get a Doomsayer, clear Artie's entire board. What else do we have to win this game?
I feel like Seiko wins this game any way he wants. Well, let's see. This is the way to prove me wrong about the Hunter's Mark. See where he ends up.
This guy's toast.
But if this is what we were trying to do in the first place, which is just clear the 8/8s, I definitely think last turn was the one to look at.
Because then they have fewer 8/8s if they...
They had 0 8/8s. He couldn't Conjurer's Calling at all.
Calling's gone.
Now,
right?
the problem with that is he could still Conjurer's Calling his Spirit of the Shark, put up 2 4-drops. You're going to be unfavored no matter how you look at it.
You're unfavored now.
Yes.
He's got to do 16. He can do 15 that I can count. So there's not a guarantee.
It's there is guaranteed with Blizzard and Cinderstorm, right?
That is guaranteed. That's the extra point.
So Blizzard, Cinderstorm is lethal. I don't think it matters if he doesn't spot it. It looks like he's not going to hit it, but there is guaranteed lethal here.
Yeah, it's not like he's going to win with 2 pings over time. Worst case anyway.
Doomsayer maybe would be an issue.
So the reason I missed that when I was trying to add it up and ended up with this conclusion is I hadn't realised we were on turn 9 with such a big board. I was thinking I could see that he needed. I thought he needed more mana.
So I think that Seiko could have been punished here if he had rolled Doomsayer exactly. RDU could have Holy Fired Face, avoided just getting pinged down. But remember, it's a 1 in 92 that happens, and Seiko is still firmly in the game.
That's over 1% though.
Yep.
It's actually significant when, Radu gives that one up. And very un-Psycho-like, even though he won anyway, which is far less un-Psycho-like.
Seiko wins at 2-0. Did I get that wrong?
I'm not sure. I thought it was 1-0, which is really happy.
It is 1-1. I apologize for that. Seiko has not won the series yet.
See, what happens when you start
I was focused too much on the actual game.
You've been to caster school, the bit where they teach you how to not count. And there you go, you passed.
I was focusing
well
on the
done.
wrong numbers.
So,
some numbers matter and some don't. And
yeah, how many wins you have? We don't care about that one. It's not an important number.
Yeah.
So Seiko misses 1, you miss 1. Slight difference of opinion. Probably going to go with the same decks again.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think RDU would ever switch off of the Betrayal Walk the Plank deck against a Giant deck.
Is that a typical way that would pan out, or do you think the Doomsayer Luna start into RDU's clunky hand was just one of the many combinations?
We saw Seiko 4-keep that hand, and I just want to point out that I think it was right.
Okay.
You know, Doomsayer is just quite a good card versus what RDU wants to do. I think that the game plan that RDU has actually kind of folded to that as well. You know, when you're keeping Walk the Plank and Betrayal versus a hand of Doomsayer, Cyclone, Arcane Intellect, it just doesn't line up very well at all.
Yeah, and Luna's a lovely card to stick as your bad tempo minion.
Yeah.
If it's the only minion on board, because they have to kill it, which means you're probably going to get to play a better setup next turn, one way or another, with your 4-mana turn.
Out of all the decks that can kill it, like without too much pain, I think it is Rogue. You know,
Backstab SI is just a natural play.
Vendetta is honestly just so good against that.
Yeah.
But you still take that risk as a mage because it is pretty unlikely that they have 2 cards in hand at that point in the game.
So we are 1 apiece. Can RDU get this one done? Again, I think that these people on 4 and 4 can't afford to lose much this time around because there's too many of them. 4 and 5 in the other division might not be terrible, but here it's a mess. Fairy Dragon, keep. Didn't see the other cards.
Coin,
I didn't.
good.
Yeah. And on the other side, Seiko this time. This is the almost exact opposite draw for the two players.
Seiko keeps Ray of Frost. I like it, but it's not going to line up nicely versus this Fairy Dragon.
Yeah, RDU has a much more workable hand this time, and Seiko's, yeah, magic tricking on one says it all.
Do you have any rules for when you magic trick early?
As late as possible in general, so I've got more information. If I have 2 Sea Giants and a Ray of Frost in my hand, I'll magic trick on turn 1. Even then, you could wait till turn 3. But I think there's a lot of 2s and 3s in the deck. So you want to make sure that you don't waste your mana, so you do it on 1.
I like doing it on, oh, you could go test subject, Ray of Frost, and then get 3 instead of 2.
And how many of those can target the Fairy Dragon? But that's actually still quite interesting. So when you were going to say about your rule of thumb, I think I'm interested in this one.
So I think my rule of thumb with Magic Trick in the early game is if I do not have an Arcane Intellect in my hand,
okay,
or a Banana Buffoon,
okay,
I often Magic Trick on 1 because the power level of having Arcane Intellect, or even something like Unexpected Results, just outweighs the negatives of losing stuff for your Mana Cyclone.
Interesting.
I think you always want to be able to have a powerful turn 3 as the Mage deck. If you're missing your turn 3, like doing anything that advances your game plan, that's where you're going to start having issues winning games.
So you've got to try and find something to do there.
Yeah.
I guess one of the, yeah, if you've got Apprentice and various things, that's totally different because it becomes a naught mana spell. It's really alien. It's like tracking. Tracking throughout history, there's no general rule of when to use tracking. You have to work out which deck you're in and what situation you're in.
Sure.
The old, you didn't want to tracking away your Rexar versus Warrior sort of stuff. That got so complicated.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain
Or
point.
tracking into fatigue.
And it's really interesting, too, because it's always a binary decision. It's either you do it or you don't do it.
Yeah, it can't be that hard, right? I'll get it right
But
half
then,
the time if I
yeah,
got my cat to do it.
Exactly,
And
but the
just less than that if I
are-
didn't.
Sorry for interrupting
No,
you, but
keep doing it.
the percentages are just, there's like 10 different factors for this one specific decision, and you can often kind of not understand what's going on behind someone's brain when they're making that decision.
Yeah, especially when it's close, because you know the reason.
Oh, this is so
Just
smart.
don't know the waiting, and he's going to do it.
Are they both Twin Spell, or are... I imagine one is Twin Spell, one isn't.
That's
but
my guess too.
Yes, I would like to get confirmation on that, because I actually haven't seen that interaction before. I've never seen a Twin Spell card on a test subject. In the dungeon run, it used to... Oh, we can't actually see.
I think they're different, but I'm not sure. It actually pops off the top of the box, unfortunately.
Yes.
Meanwhile, while we're talking about things, RDU's hand is still tasty. They seem to be different.
They seem to be different, so it should be Twin Spell and non-Twin Spell. Yep. Seiko has the option to go for... Seiko has the option to go Elemental Invocation, or Evocation, Mountain Giant Ray of Frost.
Sure, that works okay. I was a bit vague there because I was looking down at how RDU is going to proceed, and does Seiko want to throw? I mean, the Mountain Giant might be essential in terms of making sure the game of Hearthstone takes place here.
I think from Seiko's perspective, he really has to play the Mountain
Because he
Giant
knows
if
that-
possible, because he doesn't have the Conjurer's Calling.
And Radu has to kill it. He doesn't know there's no
yes,
call.
exactly.
Oh,
Vendetta.
that helps. Oh my.
Walk the plank. We can even Shadow Step or Novice Engineer.
Wow. And that's absolutely massive for RDU. There's so much he can do now.
This is where the power level of the anti-mage sideboard really comes into play. We saw how Fairy Dragon, Ray of Frost just does not answer it. And now we have a Walk the Plank for Seiko's pretty much only way of winning this game.
So many cards.
I hope you like my invention.
0 mana, draw 2.
Walk the other plank. Interesting that RDU could have chosen not to put that Novice back down and keep Sea Giant at 7.
really quickly, if you ever make a tree as your pet, do you ever walk the plank? Like how you walk your dog?
But no, it depends if it barks at the other pets.
That was a good comeback.
So Artie gave the option here to Seiko in return for 2 cards, in fairness. But he's given the option to Seiko here to be able to put a Sea Giant down because he's got the second walk the plank. That's great. Play your Sea Giant, and I'll blow it up with tempo.
Is it weird for me to say this feels kind of like the rogue hand of yore, where you had a bunch of cards and they just didn't really do anything? Obviously, a Sea Giant here is an 8/8, but it's almost like I'm looking at backstab, prep.
No, I've found that a lot with this deck. Some of the hands... I actually find it with the Mage deck sometimes as well.
Yeah, and then Gadgetzan Auctioneer is Mana Cyclone.
Yeah. I see it with both these 2 decks more than occasionally that they just seem to have nothing in them. That's why it took a long time to be convinced that Mage was even remotely good. And I'm still not convinced it's the best deck in the game, as some people try to tell you it is. Because you've just got a hand of arena cards. It's a pretty good arena deck, but you have...
And then when you get your one card that makes everything work, it suddenly just blows your opponent up.
And I feel what happened is when Mage came out, no one knew how on earth to deal with 2 Mountain Giants on turn 5 or whatever.
Sure.
But the more you played against it, the more people started to ruin the Mage. But the Mage is currently in the process of fighting back. Now the Mage knows how people are playing against it. Sort of skill levels are evolving.
That's a big pickup for Seiko, but looking at Artie's hand, he might still just have lethal anyways.
Yeah, this is one of those hands where he must have. There's backstabs.
Backstab
there's
Vendetta kills 2 taunts. Maybe Seiko has to play a Rabble Bouncer instead, and then you have to figure out whether that lines up or not.
So the Shark Life Drinker means that all RDU has to do is find a way to do 1 damage. So if you kill off all the taunts, you win.
Reflect.
I'm just thinking about next turn, like the upcoming turn RDU has. Is there a lethal here?
It depends how many taunts are in play.
Walk the plank, Vendetta Backstab is going to do it. It's 1 over. SI7 off the top makes it even easier.
It goes to 2-1 to RDU, and both of the big leaders have lost. Fino and Seiko going down, and RDU starting to remove himself from that 4-4 pack, and also to a tiny degree bringing Seiko back to that back 7-2. He should still be reasonably good place, but he can't afford to lose any now.
I think Seiko is still pretty comfortable, but we did see him lose a game in the past 2 weeks. That's not something that he wants to do. He doesn't want to be 1-1. Seiko is a player that always wants to be winning. Yeah. I mean, they all do, but
yeah, I was just going to say, I want to be winning. It just, you know, we can dream, right?
Yeah, but RDU kind of separates itself from that cluster of 4-4 players that we see. I think it was a really well-played game by RDU, besides maybe the shaky game 2.
Yeah, something on that turn didn't end up right with that Hunter's Mark. I don't want to say what, but I do want to say I'm sure that turn wasn't correct.
But I think in game 3, his game plan just made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Executed it quite well.
Very much so. Got it done. And winning what I think a lot of people think is unfavourable, although we've heard Colento say that he thinks it's favoured for the Rogue.
I think it's also very skill dependent. Like, if people are playing well from both sides, that influences the match quite a bit. I mean, and also, I feel like that game was also a bit hand dependent. Seiko's hand at the very end.
Yeah, games 2 and 3 were like...
I wouldn't call them non-games because there were a lot of decisions that both players had to have made, but at the very end there, I'd say that Seiko really had nothing he could do. You know.
Talking about the very end, we are not at the very end just yet. We have one more match for you to come today. Swids and Yala. First look at both of those players this weekend. We're going to set that up and we'll be back for the last match of the EU Grandmasters in about 3 minutes.